Hello folks, I'm back again with another paint table update. So this week I kind of did a big push. I did something I don't usually do. I actually had, instead of about 2 sessions, I had about 5 sessions. I decided not to work on any videos or anything this week and just push on through and get this project done. And to do that, I just painted a little bit each night this week. Finished up all the monsters out of the core box, and all the monsters and the extra monuments out of both boxes. All of that got done this week. In addition to all of that, I also painted all the monuments. So this had a terrain expansion. Now this is just aesthetic. It doesn't offer any different gameplay options or anything, but I went ahead and I painted it also. So there's kind of a lot to go through. In fact, let's start with the monuments. So the monuments are an optional thing. They're cardboard components, and you can kind of use this to make the elements a little bit more three-dimensional. Although you're probably still going to use those cardboard components because they have what those areas do written on them. So inside the box here, you're going to see a number of elements, and what a lot of these elements do, a lot of them replace like little areas on the board. Like for instance, there are villages on here. So as far as the game goes, wherever a village is, you can increase your army size. And normally that's just indicated by a little print, a printed village on the map itself. But perhaps these 3D ones will make it a little bit easier to identify the areas where you can do that. I didn't have a big problem with this, not using this expansion at all. In fact, I've never used this expansion. I decided to paint it anyway. And I used similar techniques that I would use for all the other stuff. I was going to do this more like I did the monuments and basically have them all kind of a monotone color, but that seemed a little bit boring, and I decided to go ahead and paint these up kind of like I did the heroes and the other things. I still kept the color scheme really basic. The village in particular had a lot of different elements to it that kind of make it look neat, and I spent a little bit more time on it than probably I should. There were a lot of them too, so I just kind of production line through all of these things as if they were an army or something else, instead of a little tiny terrain piece. I noticed that the doorway on the biggest house in the village kind of looked a lot like the temples that were around, and it looked like a house had just kind of been built around it. So I painted it exactly like I did the temples. Temples were all really basic, kind of a basic 3 or 4 color thing. I didn't spend a lot of time on these, although they are the most likely pieces of the terrain that I'll be swapping out with cardboard. The standees that represent these in the game are not bad at all, but I think that this will be a little bit more, a lot more interesting to look at. I only wish I could fit them in the core box. I stuck to kind of the same rules that I've been using throughout all of this, and that the bases of this and anything on the bases of all these miniatures that I've painted, they all are just kind of done with a basic kind of Sundrop Agros Dunes color from Games Workshop. But I did try to spice up each monument with a little bit something extra. as we went through. There were quite a lot of locations, and it's basically all the locations in both of these things There might even include things from other expansions too. I don't have all the expansions. I didn't get the Giants, and I didn't get the one with the sea monster in it, or the ghost ship, or whatever it is. I didn't get any of that stuff. So this is all the stuff you see is just from these boxes here. I spent a lot of time on all the different locations. In fact, there was one in particular though that I got completely wrong. It's the one with all the hands and stuff. When I was looking at it without looking at the artwork for it first, sometimes I'll just paint something based off how I feel like it should look, and other times I reference the artwork. I try to reference the artwork as much as I can so it's not too confusing when you're pulling it out and trying to set things up. Or you're looking at a card with a picture of that guy on it, I want it to look like you see it. But on this particular thing with those hands coming out, I thought that they were wood. And I ended up having to reprime the whole thing and then paint it back as ice. So that was my biggest setback as far as painting these things. Now the monsters that I painted out of both of these were really neat. They're all sort of mechanized though. So a lot of it was kind of, I don't know, almost robot colors. So it went into robot mode, a lot of metallics, a lot of contrast paint over metallics to kind of give it a metallic sheen, kind of like it's colored metal or painted metal. It's funny when you get into painting like that, it's almost like you're painting sports cars or something like that. So I kind of got into sports car mode on a lot of these and painted them up to match that. I spent a lot of hours painting all of this stuff. I did have to come up with a rule for the bases, and I kind of started this with the heroes. All the bases are just the Agros dunes. It's basically the same color that I'm going to use for the monuments when I do kind of my DIY Sundrop color on the monuments. Doing that with the bases kind of really simplified and sped up the whole process. It's like I didn't care if there was a wrecked boat on the bottom of there, or they were standing in a river, or what. No matter what's possibly going on underneath them, it's just all that color because I really want the character that's standing there to pop out and that seemed like the best way to do it. And it gave it sort of a uniformity across the board. I think the only time I didn't use that base was for the sea monster, because I read it looked like he was coming up out of the water for one. And the other thing is it has all these rules about attacking people near the shore and stuff like that. So I went ahead and gave him a water base and broke a rule there. And of course I did the same with the boats when I painted them. They all had like a water base on them. course, we have all the monuments. Now, the monuments I did with the DIY Sundrop, exactly like I showed you a couple of videos ago when I was playing with that. They came out really good. I'm having trouble remembering what exactly the Sundrop cost, but the little pint of paint, or the little can of paint for that, was about I think they're like $6 or $7 here. And then you got your time and whatever that's worth. So for me, I just put on a couple of Lex Friedman podcasts and went to town. I didn't have to pay much attention to what was happening visually. I just kind of tuned into that, got into my flow state, and I finished those things off in no time at all. And I think they look great. You could definitely paint those up and make them look more interesting, but they're supposed to be statues. They wouldn't be necessarily like very colorful or anything like that. Like I would have really have loved to have done is some sort of marbling. Like if I was really good at doing that kind of marble effect, I think that that would look neat if they looked like they're all made of marble and you could really pull off that marble color. But that sundrop kind of light color does seem to do well. It kind of represents stone and kind of give you a stone feeling. Stone feeling. The other thing I got that was extra were these little plastic runes. Now, what's funny is that the things that the runes sit in, the little forges that they sit in, those were all sun-dropped already. And but it came with these little runes to put inside of them. Now, these are very, very tiny little pieces of plastic, and they were quite the pain in the butt. But I did manage to secure all of them on a piece of cardboard with some double stick tape, and I primed both sides of it. And after priming both sides of them, I gave them the same treatment with that Agros Dunes. Then I went through and painstakingly painted in all the runes and kind of like went over the raised areas and painted in all the runes so it was a little bit easier to read them. I experimented a little bit with the colors on this one to see if I could find one that I liked better. And I grabbed the Speed Paint sand color. I can't remember exactly what it was called. And I tried it alongside it too. I think doing this was probably one of the more tedious and painstaking things. But those using the plastic ones right out of the box, they just weren't great. I mean, you couldn't read them at all. They're just kind of like bright little white pieces of plastic. In fact, the cardboard ones look better inside of the forges that came with this expansion. But now that they're all painted and stuff, I'm excited to try them out and see if I like them as much as the cardboard versions, which are admittedly probably still easier to read. There's a lot of great miniatures in this game, and it was a lot of fun to paint. It's kind of fallen out of my cycle on this. I usually would have played this a lot more by now, but of course, whenever you're painting something, it kind of comes out of the circulation. So I'm eager now that it's painted, and we'll throw it back in and try and see if I can get in some of those 4, maybe 5-player games over at the game club. And see what I really think about this. Now, I liked it enough at 2 players to keep it. It is not, though, my favorite area control game. And I'm hoping that I see more of all the different elements that you can do with this game in the higher player count. But as I go along, I'll be sure to tell you more about what I think of this game. If you like painted reviews, if you like these little paint table updates, there's a playlist right there where you can see more. Over there's something YouTube thinks you'll like. Oh my. Over here's my subscription. Be sure to subscribe. I'd love to see you again. And click like on your way out. Enjoy your games, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.